Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie Schneiderite. Richie, we've had, in the last couple of days, two staff departures from the football team. Former offensive line coach, Augie Hoffmann, is no longer with the program, and neither is Nunzio Campanile, who has filled in a lot of different roles on the team. Most recently, interim offensive coordinator, tight ends coach,
interim QB's coach,
interim head coach, interim offensive coordinator. He's basically filled every offensive role on the staff at different points. Both those guys came over to Rutgers when Nunzio was on the previous staff, but both are former big-time head coaches in the high school level, New Jersey, and they are no longer with the program. So I guess just talk us through why they're leaving and what that means for Rutgers.
So I mean, I guess you use the term leaving loosely. Like, they're definitely leaving, but it's kind of like a mutual type decision. So I mean, Nuns has pretty much coached everything but offensive line on the offensive side of the ball. I guess he didn't coach wide receivers either, but I don't want to say he didn't get a raw deal. He's been here for quite some time. The expectation was you're going to add these two big North Jersey guys, and they're going to open up like some kind of pipeline from North Jersey to Rutgers, and it just never panned out. In terms of Nuns, it's kind of weird because his forte is coaching quarterbacks. He never really got that chance. I guess he got here's 4 games versus Michigan State, Michigan. Like, have fun, like, see what happens. That's not enough time, in my opinion. Now, I think Nuns is going to pop back up on the college team relatively soon. I don't know where or what level. If I had to guess, he'll probably drop down a level and take an assistant coaching role, or I could even see a Power 5 program picking him up as an analyst type situation. I know a lot of programs are starting to do that more and more. Look at Rutgers. I mean, Scott Vallone's an analyst, and he's a pretty damn good coach. Jamal Westerman, the list goes on and on. Joe Susan's technically an analyst per se. I know his title is not analyst, but they have a bunch of guys on staff at Rutgers and elsewhere, so I wasn't shocked if he ended up somewhere like that. Augie, kind of a similar situation. He was coaching running backs, then he coached offensive line this past year. I don't want to say he got a raw deal per se. I just think that Kirk wants to bring in his own guy, and that's kind of the situation here. And there's really no space for Augie. Now, I don't know where he ends up. I wouldn't be shocked if he took a year off. I know there's some people talking about that, and then getting back into coaching it the year after that. So we'll see what happens, but it's definitely just time for a change. They didn't work out recruiting wise. So it's just more or less like Kirk wants his own guys and a combination of that, and you got to get recruits at the end of the day. I know they got some decent names, and like I know Augie got Shaquan Loyal, Kyrie Banton, Al-Shadi Salam, but end of the day, those aren't North Jersey kids. Like, you got to get these North Jersey guys, and that was what you're here for.
Absolutely. And it started, we were all like really hyped about the possibility, especially for Augie when he came in, because he had 2 really high level guys from St. Joe's in Gino Vandemark and Aldrich Estime. Mm-hmm. Vandemark was a silent commit. He fucked around. He found out. He didn't end up at Rutgers. And then Estime.
Aldrich was close too.
Aldrich was really close, but I think he got that late Notre Dame offer, and that was kind of it. But yeah, the pelts weren't on the wall. You'd think for guys who were so well connected to the North Jersey parochial scene that we'd be able to land at least like one kid a class from one of these schools, but they just weren't able to do it. Point to whatever you want, but I think they were primarily brought in as recruiting hires, and that didn't work out. Mm-hmm. I think Shiano's kind of learning that, if you're not going to be like an ace recruiter, you better be a damn good coach. Because if you got a Fran Brown on staff, I'm not saying Fran Brown wasn't a good DBs coach. I don't know if he was or not. I would say he is because of how well our DBs have played since Shiano got back. Yeah. But when you have a guy like him, it honestly doesn't matter how good of a coach you are. Because when you have like the expanded staffs that we now have in college football, you can have like so many guys at practice where you can have like a coach per player essentially working in practice. So there's plenty of opportunities for kids to get coached up. It's just about how good of a recruiter are. How well do you relate with these kids? How are you able to get these kids on campus? And that's the number one factor in general. But if you're not going to be a good coach, you need to be an excellent – or if you're not going to be a good recruiter, you need to be an excellent coach.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, like just piggybacking off that a little bit. Look at the roster. Look at the main contributors on the roster. Who recruited these guys? Tyreen Powell, Max Melton, Sam Brown. I'm missing one. There's one other one. Kenny Fletcher, Carnell Davis, who's going to contribute next year. What do they all have in common? Shaquan Loyal was he was a recruiter for him. Sean Munnerlin never panned out, but Cameron Stewart, Desmond Igbinosun, Keontae Hamilton. Who is the one factor with all those guys? It's Fran Brown. Fran Brown basically recruited your team. And that goes to show you, like you just said, recruiting is 75% of the battle at this point. Yep. If you get good recruits, you can have this guy develop him or this guy develop. It doesn't have to necessarily be you per se, but recruiting is the way to go. Like if you get top recruits, you're going to be better. Simple as that.
Yeah, and our second best recruiter was Taekwon Underwood, who we let go because presumably we didn't want to give him a title bump or a pay bump, but that's who knows.
Yeah. Whatever.
So you've made some hot boards for the two open positions. One is definitely going to be offensive line. When a coach leaves, though, there's always the potential for further shakeup on staff. Like, I don't think there's 100% certainty that we're going to hire a tight ends coach. We might move somebody to tight ends coach and hire, a different position coach. But what are some of the names you've kind of heard for the offensive line job and the kind of reception we're getting?
So, no, I mean, Brian Callahan's the name that everyone wants to talk about because he's been Kirk Soraka's O-line coach for, 3 years at Western Michigan. He was tight ends coach for 1 year at Minnesota under him. Then he was moved to O-line in 2018. Then 2019, he was his O-line coach again. I think 2020, that's when he left. And that's when he went to Penn State. And then 2021, whatever. Then 2022, he's still there at O-line coach. And yes, he's probably got some loyalty to Fleck at the end of the day. I think his connections are out in Minnesota or in the Midwest at least. Is Minnesota considered the Midwest? I guess it is technically.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
So he's very familiar with how this offense works, and he's a very good coach at the end of the day. So it wouldn't shock me if they try to reach out to him. I know he's developed quite a heck of an offensive line in Minnesota. I know the quarterback play has been kind of the wide receiver play has been but this offensive line is pretty damn good, and it's a big reason why Mohamed Ibrahim was able to get 20 fucking touchdowns last year.
Yep.
On top of that, not just player development, scheme-wise, he knows exactly what Kirk wants to run and how he's going to run it. So, I mean, I think that's the perfect fit. Now, that being said, it sounds like Rutgers reached out to Darnell Stapleton. They did offer him the job, it sounded like. He did turn it down. He also was offered by a couple different he had a couple opportunities, I'll say, from not just the college level, but a level above that.
Interesting.
But, so there's something to watch there. And he turned that down as well. And now it sounds like he's going to get a pretty nice pay bump. It sounds like his buyout's pretty crazy at Florida, which doesn't shock me because Florida's got all the money in the world.
Yep.
They had all the leverage, too, when they hired Napier. Napier was going up from Louisiana to Florida, so they could probably write anything they wanted to in that contract, and they all would have probably accepted. So, the other name I keep a really, really close eye on is Scott Vallone. He's been working with the offensive line for, 2 years now? 3 years if you count his GA year when his first season. When Shiano returned, he came back to the program as a GA. He started working with the O-line. Then he got promoted to offensive assistant, which is basically probably similar to the role he already had. It's just you don't have the title graduate assistant anymore. And he played a bit. And like we just said, recruiting is the life of. I don't know what the term would be there. Recruiting is the life of an assistant coach at this point. So he landed Dylan Braithwaite. He landed Ian Strong, and he's a big reason why I don't want to say probably, but you're probably on top for Josiah Brown. So I'll say probably on top. Who's number 2 in New York, number 1 in New York? It's him and Caden Brown go back and forth. So regardless, that one makes too much sense to me.
I think we could see a third of our class come from the New York City area next year, and they'll probably be the highest rated recruits too. And Ballone's playing a huge part in most of their recruitments. I do want to kind of touch on Brian Callahan a bit. If you just look at what he's put into the NFL recently, Daniel Falele got drafted in the 4th round recently. PFF's number 1 center right now is for this season was John Michael Schmitz. That was Minnesota's center. He's got 2 guards who are in the top 50 of their respective positions. One was Chuck Falega, who transferred in from Michigan. The other was Axel Rushman. Then he had a top 50 tackle in Quinn Carroll. So Quinn Carroll is also a high-level recruit. So in his time at Minnesota, he's recruited well, and he's also developed these kids well. And Minnesota always seems to have a good offensive line, so I think he's probably the guy that makes the most sense if he's willing to leave. Again, doesn't necessarily have direct ties to the area, so that'll be tough. You've already touched on how Stapleton wasn't interested. So if circling back, we're paying $1 million this year for Sean Gleason to not be here. We're paying $1.4 for Kirk to be here as the offensive coordinator. So that's almost $2.5 million just in the offensive coordinator. Schiano has an assistant coaching pool. Is that pool going to be affected in terms of hiring? Like, is Schiano basically able to go over his budget if he wants to? Because if not, that might force us to hire, a guy like Valone at like a very low price.
Yeah, I would say he's more than able to go over his budget. It's just a matter of convincing these guys to come here. End of the day, this offense has been struggling for – I don't even know when the last good offense was. I guess it's under the fridge, if I had to guess. I don't know who – was it Fridge or Kill? Who was last? Because Kill had a pretty decent offense.
Kill was under –
Kill was under Ash, so it would probably –
Ash.
Yeah, so I would argue Kill was pretty decent. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough to say, and it's tough to put your job on the line here. Like, you have a pretty cushy gig at Minnesota. You didn't follow Kirk in the first place to Penn State when he left, so that I found a little bit interesting. And he did get promoted recently to run game coordinator, what was it, like 2 seasons ago? Now, the interesting thing is I think he got passed up for co-OC, which I don't know if that plays really a factor or not, because how many co-OCs are offensive line coaches? Maybe a couple, if I had to guess.
Sure.
So I know Simon obviously got co-OC, and I think tight ends was Greg Harbaugh, his name is. I think he also got the co-OC role as well. Basically is just like
Matt Simon and Greg Harbaugh Jr. are the co-OCs now in Minnesota.
Okay, yeah. So it's I don't know if that's going to be their full-time OC thing, or is that just like a title bump?
Yeah,
is that what they're planning?
Sounds like it's going to be a 1A, 1B situation where Matt Simon's the 1A, Greg Harbaugh's the 1B. These co-situations never really seem to work out unless there's a clear, like, I'm actually the offensive coordinator, you're co because you needed a pay bump. Like,
that's fair, yeah, and that's what happens. I mean, that's just college football nowadays. But it does seem like he kind of got passed up a little bit. But he's still run game coordinator. I wouldn't be surprised if Rutgers reached out and he went right back to Minnesota and was like, "Hey, like, dude, they're giving me this. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm either out or you're paying me more."
Yep.
So it's from Illinois, so it's not like he's too far away, I guess, in Minnesota. But yeah, I mean, he seems like the perfect hire, to be honest. If you're going to go over the list that we have. There's a couple other names too, like we didn't even mention. Bob Bostad. He's been in such a weird role. He's been like offensive line coach his entire life, and then Wisconsin brought him in, and they're like inside linebackers.
Yep.
And then last season they were like, hold up, maybe you could be an O-line coach. Like, put him over there.
Yeah, maybe you were an offensive line coach in the NFL under Greg Schiano. Maybe you know what you're doing.
That was his first NFL stint, so it makes a lot of sense there. If he wanted to go, if loyalties are loyalties in coaching ranks, I mean, it would make a lot of sense for him to come to Rutgers. But he did just get hired by Indiana to be their O-line coach / a run game coordinator, another position where it's just like, here's money and here's a title, have fun.
Yep.
Another interesting name that I just like looked into yesterday is Bill Kenny. So Bill Kenny has connections to both Soraka and Schiano. He worked alongside Schiano during his days at Penn State, where he was the O-line coach at Penn State, and Schiano was the DB's coach. So that kind of just checks 2 boxes right there immediately. He was Big Ten Conference coaching experience, coached alongside Schiano, so they're very familiar with one another. He's also the recruiting coordinator at Penn State as well during that time. So that's something to monitor. Now, in terms of Soraka, he was Soraka's tight end / offensive tackles coach during his 3 years as OC at Western Michigan. So right then and there, you can argue that he has connections to arguably the 2 most important people at within the Rutgers football program, between the OC and the head coach. So, and now the interesting thing is he wasn't retained. I've said interesting like 4 or 5 times now. he wasn't retained by the new head coach at Western Michigan, Lance Taylor.
Mhm.
So that's something to monitor. So technically he is just up for grabs. So you don't have to pay a buyout. You don't have to do anything. He's familiar with the staff already. He's worked with him recently. And he was a recruiting coordinator for the past 3 seasons at Western Michigan. Now, why didn't he go with Fleck? I kind of question. I find that, I can't say the word interesting, but I find that intriguing. So it's definitely a name to monitor. I would even monitor him as tight ends coach possibly too, because he's clearly familiar with Bill Callahan too. So Brian Callahan. I don't know why I want to say Bill Callahan for some reason. But yeah,
Yeah,
another
I wonder
name.
if they're related. And what about tight ends coach or the other open offensive assistant role?
Well, the name I just mentioned obviously was I don't even know what his name was. Bill Kenny.
Yep.
So there's just a bunch of other names out there too. Like I personally would look into Jeff Moore, who's over at UMass, young up and comer. He's coached at St. Thomas More as the head coach. He was at Loomis Chaff as the head coach. I know people are like, what are we doing? Are we doing this again with the high school coach? Different situation. At these prep schools, you can kind of almost recruit a little bit. So he's kind of very familiar with the New England area because he's been coaching there from 2017 to 2021. And now he has college experience as well, as he was recruiting coordinator at UMass this past season. He's young. He's an up-and-comer. Rutgers is very familiar with Loomis Chaff. Parrish Shand, who we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
He was the head coach of Parrish Shand. I forget. There was someone else that ended up at Rutgers from Loomis. But other names I would take a quick look at would be John Marinelli. He's one of the best recruiters at UConn. He's the reason that they have Justin Jolly. He's the reason Justin Jolly was a true freshman All-American tight end.
That would be a great pickup.
He also recently just landed Michigan transfer tight end Louis Hansen, who's number 228 in our rankings in transfer portals. He's a great recruiter. His dad's called the godfather of Connecticut football. Like, and Lou.
Is he related to Rod?
I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't look into that one. But he's also coached in the Big Ten. He coached at Arizona first as an analyst for a couple years under, who was it, Kevin Sumlin back then? Then he went to Illinois for a year under Lovie Smith. So he has Big Ten experience. He's got recruiting connections throughout the New England area. His dad has recruiting connections throughout the New England area. Now, that doesn't always translate perfectly to recruiting. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, he just developed arguably the best freshman tight end in college football.
Yep.
And his name was up for the Central Connecticut State head coaching job. He was a finalist for that job, I can confirm. Because, I'm a UConn Raider too. Bobby Bentley, Chase Dodd's dad. This one almost makes too much sense in my opinion.
Yeah. And he's been a tight ends coach at South Carolina as well.
Exactly. And when he was at South Carolina, you know who he coached with? Mark Orphy.
Yep.
Mark Orphy, when this job opened up as defensive backs at Rutgers, he reached out to Mark Orphy and said, maybe you should go reach out to him. I think that would be a great job for you. And when he encouraged them to reach out, it ended up working out. He knows Chase from his time at South Carolina when Chase was at South Carolina as an assistant strength and conditioning coach. He knows Bentley because he was a coach at South Carolina. He coached one of the best high school programs in South Carolina history at the Burns High School. He's familiar with Schiano during Chase's recruitment. And end of the day, he has a pretty good resume. He worked at Auburn as an analyst. He worked at South Carolina as a running backs coach, South Carolina as a tight ends coach. Now he's South Florida's wide receiver pass game coordinator. This screams hire him. I don't know what else to say there.
And if you look at just the amount of NFL talent that South Carolina produced while he was on staff. So he was on staff from 2016 to 2020. Mm-hmm. Here's the offensive guys they put in the NFL over that time. Skill positions only. Vero Cooper, Jarrell Adams. So Vero Cooper's a wide receiver. He went in 4th round. Jarrell Adams is a tight end who I guess he played for the Giants for a while. You might remember him.
Yeah.
Hayden Hurst was a tight end who went in the 1st round. Debo Samuel was a wide receiver, went in the 2nd round, obviously still playing in the NFL. Ryan Edwards was a receiver that went in the 3rd round. That's a lot of skill position talent. When he was the tight ends coach, running backs coach, that is really impressive. So he'd be a great hire. And I think he would help with one of the top remaining transfer portal guys in Isaiah Weaver. So I guess this is a good transition into how the portal's going for Rutgers.
Xavier Weaver. Yeah, isn't it Xavier?
What did I say?
Isaiah. I think you said Isaiah. I could be wrong.
Bad. Xavier Weaver. So Rutgers recently offered a new guy in the portal named Robert Rahimi from Liberty. He was a safety. Kind of surprising they're still pursuing defensive backs, given they've already landed 2. And obviously, if you follow the boards, a guy who visited Rutgers, Joey Beljon, who's from West Jersey, which is still weird to say, ended up committing to Cincinnati. With all that being said, what are you hearing in the portal? Is there any new developments, or are we kind of just in a holding pattern?
You kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's a holding pattern. It's just more of wait and see what happens. They want a wide receiver, and that's clear as day. They want a tight end. It's clear as day. They got their D tackle, so that's one check mark done. You got your 2 DBs, check mark, check mark. Now it sounds like obviously with the new offer to Rahimi, they want to get a 3rd DB, probably a safety to fill in that Avery Young type role, because it looks like Dixon will fill in that Izzian type role and that hybrid linebacker safety type. And I think he'll fit that role very, very well. I'd argue he might fit that role better than Izzian next season. I'm very high on Dixon. I think he's going to be phenomenal for Rutgers, but Eric Rogers is going to go to corner. He'll probably fill in as that cornerback 2, if I had to guess right now. Could he get pushed by Abram or someone else? Yeah, of course, or Loyal even. But I think Abrams probably take the slot role. I think Rogers goes on the outside, Melton on the other side. You have Dixon in that one hybrid safety. You have Igmanosin in that other safety role, and then you got to get someone else. So I don't know. You don't have to get someone else, I guess, but it sounds like they're going to try to get someone else. Wide receiver is the big one. I don't know where they look towards wide receiver. I know people are asking me on the boards too, and it's in terms of top tier wide receiver talent still available. You got to go down the list a little bit. Like Xavier Weaver would probably be the most ideal situation out of South Florida, especially if you can get his wide receivers coach. But other than that, there's not really like a ton of big names. You're going to have to probably wait it out a little bit. I wouldn't shock me if they just said, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to wait till after spring, because that's what spring is. The kids are going to be like, I'm number 2 on the depth chart. I'm number 3. Fuck this. Yep. I'm out. All right, see you. And then they're like, I'm going to get paid. And then you go in the portal and it's like, I got no options. And it's like, shit.
Yep.
But you should be able to find someone.
A lot of the realistic guys who made a lot of sense in my eyes, like a guy like DeQuince Carter from Fordham, who just, had an awesome year. He was a top 50 rated PFF guy at wide receiver out of 1,100 receivers. Was recruited to Fordham by Coach Shaw. Rutgers showed no interest. He ended up in Indiana. So we're going to have to see him next year. That's going to suck. A guy like Tyrese Chambers from FIU. He's going to Maryland. A guy like Naeem Simmons. He's going to USF.
Bobby Bentley. It makes sense.
Well, Bobby Bentley's no longer with that staff, I think.
Oh, he got let go?
I think they did. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
I might be wrong.
I was going to say that would be interesting. And then there you go. He's available. There's another. No, I think he's still there as far as I can tell.
Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, so Naeem Simmons ended up at USF. Like all these guys were maybe not Chambers, but the other two, they were within reach. Mekhi Jackson, who was the freshman All-American out of St. Francis, he went to Appalachian State. Like that was a guy Rutgers probably could have landed if they went after him hard. Dakari Carter from Merrimack, who is a North Brunswick guy. Mm-hmm. He wanted to be at Rutgers, but he ended up at Georgia State, which isn't that high of a level of competition, but that's a guy you could have landed.
Yeah.
Like there was plenty of opportunities to land decent players. We just didn't engage in the portal. And now we're kind of left playing a game of musical chairs in the final round, and we're entering a game where there's only one chair and about 10 people circling around it. So,
yeah. But something interesting, I just a quick Twitter search and Bobby Bentley. About 2 years ago, Gus Malzahn, who I think we all know pretty well, is a pretty damn good college coach. He's now at Central Florida. He tried to steal Bobby Bentley he tried to hire him as the offensive coordinator at UCF when 2 years ago.
Yep.
Obviously, Gus, he decided to stay. He got promoted to pass game coordinator. So it seems like he's very comfortable down in South Florida, whether that be a connection to the staff or something. But if this man's going to get hired by Gus Malzahn as OC, I think you can kind of trust him to come here and coach tight ends or whatever. Or you maybe move someone around. I don't even know. But it would make a lot of sense to hire him, I think, if you were at least try to, at the very least. So it's an interesting name.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense, but not much has made sense regarding the portal for Rutgers this year on the offensive side.
Yeah, it's tough.
So we do have a basketball game as well tonight. Rutgers plays at Northwestern at 9 p.m. A little bit of a late start time, so I hope everyone's able to stay awake for that whole game. But Northwestern's kind of surging right now. It's not a team I'd want to play at this very moment. It's not going to be an easy game. I haven't checked the spread. I'll check that now. But what should we look out for tonight against Northwestern?
Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool. Because it's not showing my mic on here. I just kicked my computer again for like the 18th time on this pod. But yeah, no, this is a tough matchup. Northwestern's no slouch. They didn't just beat Indiana, so that's a pretty big win for them.
At Assembly Hall, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like the craziest thing in the world for them to lose this game. But this Rutgers team, you gotta every time they take an L, they bounce back like tenfold. So it wouldn't shock me if Rutgers just comes out, blows them out the door, and it's like, oh, what the hell just happened? Like, and we'll be you'll see the boards, they'll be freaking out, and it's like, what the? So this is a quad one game too. This is big for Rutgers. Tournament resume. You got to get this dub, especially because you're facing Ohio State Sunday, home game, so it might help a little bit. But Ohio State's arguably the top team in the Big Ten. I think you can argue. Purdue, obviously, they're not that good because Rutgers just kicks the shit out of them every time. Kicks the shit out of, yeah. But no, I mean that's probably their Ohio State. If you look at the numbers wise, is the toughest matchup going forward, and that's coming up next. You can't look ahead. You just got to focus on this game and just walk out and just try to get the win, no matter what it takes. So
Northwestern is 3-1 in conference. They opened up conference play with a win at Michigan State. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. Their only loss was against Ohio State. They just went into Assembly Hall and beat Indiana. They beat Illinois at home. This is a hot team. Rutgers is a slight favorite at Northwestern. They're a 1.5-point favorite right now. That's what I'm seeing. Some of the players to watch out for: Chase Augie, I think is how you say his name.
Yeah, I believe so.
Augie, and Boo Buie, which is all-time
Boo
funny name. Those are their top 2 scorers. In terms of 3-point shooting, I honestly don't know a whole lot about them other than they've had a lot of success recently.
Yeah, they're such a weird team too, because like there's a couple games early in season where you look at the numbers and it's like, all right, man, they're playing great defense. Like 52 points against a Liberty team that's pretty good. They only gave a 43 to an Auburn team that's ranked, or I think they're ranked at least. I forget. And then all of a sudden it's like 87 to Pittsburgh. It's like, wait, what just happened? Like, and then all of a sudden it's like you switch it back and it's like 63 to Michigan State, who you beat, 60 points to an Illinois team. And then, yeah, you won, but 83 to Indiana. It's like, what, are you playing defense or not? Like, what's going on here? One game you're locking down a team that's like a top team in the country. And the next game you're like, you're giving up 80 points. And it's like, there's such a weird one. And it's hard to really like tell how good they actually are. Now that being said, they're on a hot streak right now. So you do have to figure something out there.
Yep.
Jason Doggie's number 8 in scoring in the conference right now, so that's one you got to watch out for. I think you probably put he's 6'4". You probably put Caleb on him if I had to guess. I mean, Cam's been pretty decent at defense too recently. He's had his struggles from time to time, but he's been decent. So maybe you start out there and see what happens. But yeah, this is not an easy matchup by any means. I know we used to think Northwestern used to be like, whatever, keep it moving. Now it's pretty tough. And ironically they lost their best player, and I think they got better.
Yeah, so Northwestern, their underlying metrics don't like them as much as you'd think for a 12-3 team. So they're 51st in Ken Palm. Rutgers, despite being 11-5, is 16th in Ken Palm. Northwestern is a very similar team according to the metrics as Rutgers. They're kind of rough offensively, but very, very good on defense. So they're a top 10 team in terms of defensive efficiency on Ken Palm. Rutgers is number 3, and Northwestern is number 10. Northwestern, in terms of offense efficiency, is 159, and Rutgers is 131st. So just a very similar style, it seems. I know that they're very aggressive on defense. So it's basically going to be like who can play better defense and shoot better tonight. And I know that sounds like overly simplistic, but like they went into Assembly Hall and scored 84 points. Like that is no joke. Going on the road and scoring that many, like keeping up with a team that's shooting well in Indiana last night or 2 nights ago, it's going to be tough. I don't know. I think Rutgers needs to bounce back.
I know this is just a stupid stat, but it's like they're also very lucky. They're like number 39 in luck per Ken Palm. Rutgers is number 346 in Ken Palm.
Yeah,
for luck, and it's just like, where does that rank technically? 346 is the bottom like 15.
Yep.
Bottom 20 maybe. But yeah. I mean, luck is a factor at the end of the day, but this team plays great defense, so I'm kind of like eerily confident in this one. Like, if I could, I can't in New Jersey, clearly, because there's stupid laws that say you can't bet in New Jersey on Rutgers or Seton Hall or any other program. I'd probably even, I guess the spread doesn't matter. It might just help you a little bit instead of money line, but I'd probably bet on Rutgers. I'd probably like heavily bet on Rutgers. I'm really confident that this team's going to bounce back, and they do it every time. So I don't even know why I'm saying like out of nowhere, but I'm confident they pulled this one off.
I kind of am too. I'm in the process of depositing to make a bet. So, but I also bet on them against Iowa the other day. So,
what was the spread on? No, they were favorites, right? No, they were underdogs.
Against Iowa. No, they were favorites.
They were favorites
They were favorites against Iowa. They were like a 5.5 point favorite against Iowa.
And don't take my gambling advice, but hey, if you read the War Room each week, my college basketball bets, I just got to say, pretty damn good. So suck it, Christian Craig. And you know what? I don't like how I got called out on my college football bets this week by Christian Dyer. Don't call me out on that.
Did he really?
Yeah, he quote tweeted at me. He's like, yeah, that's what I want to do is listen to your college football bets after this season. I was like, damn, all right, just tell me you remember on the site without telling me you remember on the site. But yeah, 28-8 so far this year, and just Big Ten matchups. So I mean, I think I know the
straight up, right?
Yeah, it's just straight up. Yeah. I'm not doing spread. I'm too lazy. I'll mess it up.
All right, guys. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we sign off here, Rich?
Let's see. Coaching hires. There's no timeline for it, so stop asking me. Tuesday will be the new Hoops recruiting updates. That will be pretty big.
What's happening tomorrow?
What's tomorrow? I don't even know.
The 12th.
Remind me.
There was an announcement about press availability.
Oh, yes. Kirk Soraka and Greg Schiano will be available tomorrow. If you have questions, post them in the comments, I guess, of the YouTube. Or if you're listening to this on the site, post them on the site. Start a thread. I don't care. And I'll ask him anything that has anything but to do with his firing in 2010, because I'm not asking that question on the first day. I would like to be somewhat in his good graces, so make the questions reasonable. Greg and Kirk Soraka, that's pretty much it tomorrow. I don't know how long it's going to last. Maybe like, I think 10 to 12 minutes each are usually press conferences. So, and then like I was saying before, Tuesday, basketball recruiting rankings will be updated. Gavin Griffiths right now, I think, is sitting at Griffiths. Sorry, I pronounced that wrong. 30. I think he's going higher. I'm not sure how much higher. It's already Pike's highest recruit ever. But that might not last very long, so we'll see. And then Bay Ndangu, who apparently I forgot to change his profile to committed. So ignore that notification that you guys are about to get on the Rivals app. But yeah, he's going to be in the top 150. It sounds like there's a big fight for it among a couple analysts. They liked him in the Tariq Invitational, I think it was called, in Las Vegas. He dominated. Yeah, he's a bit of a project, but top 150 project. So he's still pretty damn good recruit. So end of the day, I think Rutgers is going to end up with 2 top 150 guys in this class, and Michael Davis, who's probably a little underrated, but this is big. This is big for Rutgers. Rutgers basketball on the rise. And like I said last pod, the ceiling's here, and I always think it just stops, and it's just like, nope, it just keeps going. So
the ceiling is the roof.
Yeah, there you go, Jordan.
Yeah. Another interesting thing, guys, we're talking about this, and I've seen it mentioned a few places, but as we're kind of letting ourselves dream, our minds wander a bit about this basketball team this year, one of the regional sites is MSG, the Eastern Regional. So the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 is going to be held at MSG.
That is true.
Rutgers gets in that East Regional and makes a run to MSG. Can you imagine what that environment's going to be like if they get out of that first weekend?
We'll get a preview kind of in February.
It's true, but there's not really
little preview. Not as
yeah.
much,
There's not really real stakes in that game. It's a conference game. It's always got stakes, but it's not a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8 game.
But
allow your minds to wander there throughout the next couple months.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. What game was that? Is it Michigan State?
It's Michigan State. It's the beginning of February. I think it's like the 2nd of February.
You're 17-5. I think that environment's going to be pretty close.
I mean, we have to win 6 straight to be 17-5. Yeah.
I'm going a little overboard here, but like, hey, you wanted to wander. I wandered a little further.
We have wandered right into oncoming traffic there. So with that, I will have a sign off here. We've gone pretty long today, but appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe on YouTube. Please give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app. If this is the first time listening, please follow us or subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks again, guys. This has been another edition of the Night Report Podcast. Signing off.